So welcome everybody to this session on art education or aesthetic education. And to start off with, I need to say that I'm not an art educator. I'm not even an artist, although I'm quite often mistaken for one because of my dreads. And whether that statement is true or not also depends on how you define artist, and I'll come
Excuse
back to
me,
that in.
can you please talk a bit louder?
Okay, okay, I'll try that. Um, so I'm not an art educator, but and I'm not even an artist, but that depends on how we define artist. And because I'm not an expert in that sense, this is not going to be like a sermon from the mount kind of a lecture. Actually, I don't really much like lectures anyway. I much prefer dialogue and conversations. So hopefully we'll have some conversation shaping up in this 1 hour that we have together. And what I'll do is I'll bring in a certain perspective that I'd like to use to frame this conversation. And once that's introduced, we can hear from different people in this dialogue. And I hope we can continue after this 1 hour session as well. So first, to give a little bit of context, so I was a nerd, possibly still a nerd because of programming competition medals and engineering degree and things. And I used to think that art and art education was an absolute waste of time. What's the point with all of these things? What useful things can you do with this? It's a waste of time.
Sifan,
Yes.
you froze and we did not hear some of your words, but it's okay now. Just to let you know, we skipped some of
Okay.
your words.
What did you last hear clearly? Okay, let me try again with the context. So I was and possibly still am a nerd, and I used to think that art and art education was a waste of time. But now I am very much an advocate for aesthetics, and there's a reason I prefer to use the word aesthetics rather than art as well, and I'll come back to that towards the end of this part. Now, how this conversation got initiated, or why I was thinking about this, was because as a co-founder of Schools 4.0 Lanka, which is Schools for Self-Directed Education or Democratic Education, one of the things I was wondering about is what is the role of art in the school? Like, do we provide art education? What do we provide? What do we need to do? And so I've been thinking about it a lot for that reason, but the actual epiphany of what the answer.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Could I disturb you? Could you speak loudly because I can't heard your voice clearly.
Okay, I will.
It is the same for me. Yes, you are very low.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe closer to your microphone.
Yes. Is it better now? Because sometimes the headset doesn't. Does it sound any clearer now?
No, it's not so good.
Is it that there's a background noise?
Yeah, it's still the same. Sound is not good. The volume is the same.
Volume.
It sounds fine to me, Sifan, but I'm wearing these headphones.
Yes.
If not, without the headphones, depending on people's own speakers, it might not be loud enough.
Okay, now I'm actually trying the microphone on the computer rather than the headset. Is it better now?
Yes.
You might lean in. You might lean into it a little bit too to increase.
Okay. So yeah, the purpose of trying to have this conversation, because I was wondering what role art education plays in the school, but the epiphany in terms of sort of what the answer was came from living with an artist, and this artist in question is now 5.5 years old. And if you saw anything of the background, or I think it's maybe still visible, if you have me side by side, there's some art on this wall, which is his room. And I'll explain a bit more of that in a bit as well. So first I want to just quickly mention that art is possible as a vocation, and generally the more disposable income and free time we have, the more art we consume. And what I mean by pure and applied is this could be something purely for aesthetic reasons, like going to the cinema or theater or buying a painting or listening to music. So that's purely aesthetic in a way. There's no real functional benefit there, but there's also applied art where the interior decoration of our homes, the architecture of our buildings, those obviously cost money and time to do. And when we can afford it, we do those things because it is something we value. If we didn't value it, we would not spend more on making our houses more beautiful. But the people who create that sort of art, who can make a living from it, who are using art as a vocation, are maybe not always valued. There was a UK campaign recently this year showing a ballet dancer with a caption, Fatima's next job might be in cyber. She just doesn't know it yet. And there was quite a lot of backlash about that because it was seen as demeaning or deprecating the arts. Even the example of my wife, when she was young, she was interested in music and singing, well, actually still interested in it. But at that time, her parents were like, why would you pursue this? How can you make a living out of this? And she was discouraged from pursuing that. And in a way, that's a bit strange because some of the most highest paid people in the world are artists and entertainers. But I guess it's also a very risky thing that only a few people actually make it to that level. So anyway, yes, we have artists who...
Sifan.
Yeah.
Sifan, just as again, you broke up. We lost like the last 5 seconds or more of your words. You might consider going without your camera to make sure that that does not happen.
Yeah. Okay. I think still the screen share is maybe taking up some bandwidth, but let's see. Okay, I don't think it lets me stop. Okay. So yes, there are people who pursue art as a vocation, and that fulfills an important role in society as well. But even without it, even without being paid for it, we can create art for others to enjoy without having any financial motive. So we do it not because we want to make money out of it, but because other people enjoy doing it, and maybe we enjoy creating it as well. So from this kind of a definition, if we take satire also to be an art form, then I am an artist because I really enjoy making this sort of posts on social media that are especially cynical of politics or politicians. And there are some people who enjoy it as well. So this is, I think, something that social media has allowed us to do a lot more of, because it's possible for every one of us to find at least a niche audience. And the feedback we get from that audience is also important because it kind of gives us a clue about what kind of art people, what kind of our work people are enjoying, and we can modify it accordingly. So moving from there to art in education, this extract, I'm not sure if the text is very readable, but I can share the link for this later as well. This is from a report in 1943 that in what was then Ceylon, where there was a special committee on education, and they had some very forward-thinking ideas about education. For example, they have understood that it's a media for self-expression, and that is really important because that gives the originality, which is so valuable in mental development for the child as well as for the nation. And the spark of genius is nothing more than the spark of originality. And they talk about how this kind of creativity is needed where they are trying to get a better crop from a paddy plot or abolish unemployment. And I think this is the kind of art for creativity purposes that is coming into play these days. So they say it's essential that a child should be given opportunities to develop means of self-expression, and art and music are admirable for this purpose because the child produces something which seems to him to be good, and not the answer at the back of the book which superior people have already provided for him. And they say that above all, art must not be made the subject of examinations unless the child has become a specialist and has to be taught technique. So I think this is one place where in Sri Lanka and maybe also in other countries, we've got it wrong by making art education tied up with exams. I mean, I would actually say we shouldn't have exams even for other subjects, but probably art is the place where it hurts the most because when we can't score well in an exam in art, we tend to believe that we are not artists or we are not good enough, or the art we create is not good enough and therefore we shouldn't bother doing it. And I think that experience in school was one of the drivers why I believed I was not an artist or did not have an artistic capability. Um, this art for creativity thing is also sometimes a bit worrying or scary, because like recently I saw some academy advertising, I think it was drama or something like that, and like, you know, asking parents to send their children to learn drama so that they can develop their creativity. And I think when it's important to recognize that pursuing arts can uh, help in creativity, and arts is not the only way that does it, but if you pursue the art for the instrumental purpose of wanting to become creativity, then I think it doesn't work, because then that pressure of trying to perform to that level, I think then destroys what the art could actually do. So there is an aspect here from this report about what art education could be, but the pressure in a way to perform at a certain standard, especially with the examinations, has kind of lost that intent. And I think there is some clues about what art education could be in this report. But there is an aspect that's touched on here, but is maybe not clear enough. And that's what I would like to prefer to call aesthetics, because to feel, which is what aesthetic means, is a fundamental human desire. And maybe we don't really think of aesthetic as being to feel, but the opposite of it, anesthetic, we understand is where you don't have feelings, and that's why we have an anesthetic before going into like a surgery or something. And why I say feel is a fundamental human desire. It's not just that humans have feelings, because animals have feelings too, but the way we manipulate feelings or try to affect feelings, I think, is quite unique. I mean, like, animals also manipulate feelings when they're trying to do a mating dance to attract a mate, but something like one bird species going and listening to another bird species because they think it sounds cool, or putting, I mean, that sort of conversations about it don't exist or don't happen, because that capacity is different there. And it also links, the feelings part, I think, links also to our imagination, which is again a fundamental human ability that makes us very different in having this unique ability. And it's not just that humans can imagine, but imagination and fantasy is fundamental to being human. And to illustrate this, I'm going to share a small clip from one of my favorite artists, Terry Pratchett. And the book was Hogfather. This is from the movie adaptation of it. And so Hogfather is rather like Father Christmas, and there's been an attempt to eliminate the Hogfather, and Death, the character on the left, and Susan, his granddaughter, have somehow saved the Hogfather. And right throughout, Death has been saying that if we don't save the Hogfather tonight, the sun will not rise tomorrow. And now finally Susan is trying to ask what this means.
Now, tell me...
What would have happened if you hadn't saved him?
Yes.
The sun would not have risen.
Then what would have happened?
A mere ball of flaming gas would have illuminated the world.
All right, I'm not stupid. You're saying that humans need fantasies to make life bearable?
No. Humans need fantasy to be human. To be the place where the falling angel meets the rising ape.
With tooth fairies, Hogfathers.
Yes. As practice, you have to start out learning to believe the little lies.
So we can believe the big ones?
Yes. Justice, mercy, duty, that sort of thing.
They're not the same at all.
You think so? Then take the universe and grind it down to the finest powder and sieve it through the finest sieve, and then show me one atom of justice, one molecule of mercy. And yet, you try to act as if there is some ideal order in the world, as if there is some rightness in the universe by which it may be judged.
But people have got to believe that. What's the point?
You need to believe in things that aren't true. How else can they become?
So if we accept Terry Pratchett, and Terry Pratchett has a lot of interesting takes on things, that imagination is important for us to be human. Oops, sorry.
Now,
Then it leads to what's the last slide here, which is instrumental versus autotelic art. So instrumental is art that we do for some other purpose. So to sell it, or at least to entertain somebody else, or anything where there is some other purpose for it. But autotelic is where we do it for the sake of art itself. So the art as the self-expression is in the autotelic case is not for what the audience feels, but for how it makes the artist feel. And this is actually what I noticed from my son, because whether it's drawing on the wall, or whether it's acting, or assembling items and creating something, there is some huge imagination going on in his head, and he's using those media to express himself, and he gets some amazing wonder, joy out of it. And it doesn't matter whether whether there's an audience who's applauding it or not. I think the only role for us there is that if we were to discourage it or to demean it, then he might do it less. So we have some encouragement kind of role to play. And if anybody was able to check out that Ken Robinson videos, I'd link to the event. Ken Robinson also talks about that kind of role for adults. Like, we shouldn't be blindly cheering them or being uncritical in it, but especially in a world where art is seen, or engaging in art is seen as less valuable, and this whole STEM story also chucked away. In a world like that, it's important, I think, for adults and artists to provide that kind of encouragement to children. And there is even this quote or proverb about sing like no one is listening and dance like no one is watching, and that, I think, alludes to this autotelic art, where we just use the art form to express ourselves, to feel good about it, and to employ or make use of our imagination, and there doesn't need to be an artist in this. And one last thought before I'd like to open up and see what the others have to say about this is that this role of encouragement or supporting, or actually any sort of art education role, should be done only by people who actually have a passion for the art. I think our education suffers a lot by having maths teachers who don't like maths, or science teachers who don't like science. But I think the place where it hurts the most is when we have art teachers who don't actually enjoy art. Because how can you inspire somebody to enjoy engaging in art if you are not able to do that for yourself? That would be pretty fraudulent, I think. So to sort of summarize the thing, I think there is a opportunity for some people to be artists as a vocation, and for people who have a higher degree of talent, that makes sense. And especially for those people where they're going into more mastery of technique exams and things could be useful. Amateur artists could also benefit from technique, but it's not what they're doing for a living. They do it because they enjoy it, and because maybe they enjoy also how other people respond to it. And that also needs to be encouraged from the aspect of self-expression and our humanity. But even if there's no audience and if it's only for your own entertainment, art is still valuable. And I think that's where we really have so much opportunities. Like yesterday at Charlie's session about the democratic school in Estonia was asking about whether people did any acting or dance, and he said they tried a drama club and it didn't quite work out. But a drama club is already quite a formal engagement, and where you have to have an audience and a script and rehearse and things like that. And acting doesn't have to actually have all of those things. You could go to a drama club level, but even without it, it's still art and it's still self-expression. So I think when it comes to art education, we need to facilitate those sort of things as well. So I'm going to end the screen share. So I've said what I needed to say. So anybody who wants, okay, let me just see if anything on the chat. Right. Yes, anybody who would like to get the sort of get into the conversation, you could either raise your hand or at the moment. Yes, Tanya.
Hi, Stefan. Hi, everyone. It was very interesting. Your topic was very interesting, and I was trying to put that into a higher education context. And in my field, I teach in law and policing, and when it comes to art, what we're trying to do is incorporate elements of art into the assessment to make it more authentic, as we're trying to reduce different aspects of misconduct in assessments. So we are trying to use technology to encourage art and using different platforms. We're testing out different platforms where they could create storyboards and express themselves, especially for the policing students, to express themselves with in the form of art for their for a summative assignment. So your discussion was quite insightful, and thank you for inviting me.
Thanks, Tanya. I think Firdaus had his answer.
Yeah, thank you, Sifan. I have 2 points to note here. In fact, I think in our school education, we are undermining the contribution of art. In the sense, let's say, even from the nursery and the primary school, we use the pictures even to address mom, dad, or whoever, but we never say the who's the owner of that, the right of the artist was not mentioned. Even the art, the feeling of art was taken out. And I think that can be the one feeling we all feel, that there is no use. So art is something for extra. In fact, it's come from very beginning of our learning. The art is, they are part and parcel of our education, which we have failed to give it. Other point I just want to mention here is, when it comes to imagination, I feel even being a vision or a visionary person means that itself an imagination. So here the art is going to play a much role on even setting of someone's vision itself. So I feel this part also we were not linking it. In that case, I feel from the bottom to top of the highest education, or the highest the vision of the person or organization or even the country, and even from very bottom of starting from the education itself, art is playing a biggest role, and which we were not linked so far. That's maybe the reason we feel art as an isolated subject. Then it is a one of the part and parcel of the entire life of the human being. Thank you.
Okay, just want to comment something on that. I think there is this problem where we separate the arts and the sciences, and especially as Ken Robinson also says it a lot, how we say the sciences are important and the art is less important, and then that tends to discourage people from pursuing it. I think there is also aspect that creativity applies in many disciplines and can be learned from many areas as well. I mean, you can learn creativity from programming, you can learn creativity from science. It's just that I think it's a lot more accessible with art, because if you're trying to do creativity in chemistry, you need to have things, and you have to be careful that it doesn't suddenly go boom or something like that. Whereas for creativity in art, I mean, if you have some sand, you can do it. If you have some paper and some writing material, you can do it. Actually, if you don't have anything at all, if it's just you still can do it, right? Because your voice is an instrument, your body is an instrument, and I think that's why art is the most accessible and anywhere available medium for us to practice our imagination and our creativity, and that's something we've been losing out on. Thomas.
Yes, thank you. This is a fascinating topic, Sifan. I did not catch at the beginning, though, the problem you have with the word art and why aesthetics, which might be just feelings, somehow are more appropriate as a word for you.
Okay, yes, there was actually one other aspect of it that I forgot to mention, that in Sri Lanka, arts is seen as sort of dirty for another reason, because there's this perennial problem of unemployed arts graduates from the universities. There's a large number being produced and they are not employable, and it's political drama every time. And the thing is that those arts graduates are, well, humanities or liberal arts graduates. They're not necessarily artists or people who are performing art or things like that. So I think especially in a Sri Lankan context, aesthetic helps to separate it from what people understand as studying art, which is you, except in I think one faculty where we have a visual and performing arts faculty, except there everywhere else what's termed as art is actually humanities.
I can just take a second here. In the corner of the world where I'm from, knowing that there are no corners, aesthetician is someone who does the fingernails on somebody else's hands, right? So art, in my way of understanding English, is pure and simple. I understand art, right? And it's still confusing, but aesthetics is a very problematic word because of the vague, undefined nature of it, which is appealing on its own. So thank you for being so careful about the words, Sifan.
Yeah. So I think then we may have to go back to the distinction of art versus arts, but that's also okay. We need to work on it. Srinivas.
You're breaking up again a little bit with your video on,
Oh,
Sifan.
okay. Srinivas.
Yeah, Stefan. Sometimes I'm unfortunate to miss some nice programs. So this also I came late, and I even the bits of what you said I fully cherished and enjoyed. One thought that came to my mind was I read somewhere or heard somewhere that the mind stores matters in the form of pictures. You have anything to say on that? I would like to know more about it.
Do you mean like in how we construct memories?
You were breaking up, Sifan.
Your voice.
Srinivas, did you mean in the sense of how we construct memories, or what do you mean the mind?
Yeah, whatever we store in the mind, I heard somewhere that it is stored in the form of pictures. I mean, you have anything to say on that more? I'm a little inquisitive to know more about it.
Okay, let's. I think I'll leave that open for somebody else to try to answer. To my knowledge, there isn't something like that, and I would actually imagine that language is the bigger tool that we use to store things. I mean, not like printed words or something like that, but that especially when we don't have vocabulary, we can't conceptualize things. So I think language actually becomes very important, maybe more than the visual. But let's see if somebody else can pitch in on that. In the meantime, we also have few more hands. Andre?
May I take this?
Okay, Naga.
Mr. Srinivas, yeah, it is true because from the beginning, from infancy, human being picks up things visually. It's then even the sounds are correlated with pictures. And therefore every information is stored in pictures, and pictures are translated into language. So language is all actually as a base is the picture. So the expression comes from the picture itself. So the translation comes much later. The baser thing is looking at things and storing them.
Yes.
Language is an expression of what we have stored. Right? So it helps to say what we have seen. And what we hear is also translated into pictures.
Wow.
Because what we hear is correlated to what we have earlier seen. So everything is relative, and we can only understand things better when we see things.
In fact, I don't know exactly to call it. There was a slow learner whom I met. He's called a slow learner. But then on the way, when he was coming in a bus or whatever, as he was traveling, whatever he was seeing on the road, hoardings or whatever,
yes,
he would literally picturize them and start saying about it. That was an amazing quality of that child. In fact, I wanted to go deeper into it. I did not have an opportunity, but since Stefan was talking about art and all that, I was recalling this.
So as a child, all the impressions that the child gets from the physical world are stored, and then it is later that the correlative language comes in.
Correct.
Then the language, when the child hears, he sees the pictures of the past and then understands much better.
Right.
So words are also picturized inside the mind. Letters, words, sounds, everything you take up.
Okay.
They are picturized.
Naga, thank
I don't
you.
know if I don't know if I'm making some sense.
Yes. Thanks, Naga. I would like to also hand over to Andre, because I think he had raised his hand before as well, and I think he has some comment to make as well.
He's now available. Fine. Go ahead.
Andre?
Is he muted?
No, he's not muted. Can I take a second here, Stefan, while we're waiting for Andre?
Sure.
I'm a computer programmer. Derry, did you want to say?
No, I'm in the queue. It's okay.
Okay. Just real quick, because we only have limited time with Stefan. I'm a computer programmer, and I'm very aware of what I would easily call the art of computer programmer, but it takes another computer programmer to have the foundation to begin to see that art. And even for myself, as you were saying, the difference between doing it for somebody else or doing it for myself, I know sometimes I'm doing some really lovely creations in the phrase of art. Why? Because I know I can debug it easily. I can add more to it. There is I want to say an aesthetics to it. So, and I didn't know that when I started. It was only after about 30 years that I started to see that. Andre's back.
Okay. Just quickly, I want to say that I vehemently disagree with a lot of what's been said about the earliest everything being in images. Our minds develop in a kind of holographic sense, and the combinations of our impressions in different areas of the neurobiology for cells, smell, sound, image, all of that. But the question I want to ask is, it feels to me like this conversation so far is glossing over the negative side of art. The fact that art is a term that evolved out of a feudal age where if you were good as a craftsman, good enough to sell for the highest price, you would start being called an artisan and get a better reputation. And in our contemporary world, there's a extent to, or to some extent, art is the stuff made for rich people to buy, and symptomatic of a lot of what is wrong in the world. So as much as I deeply fundamentally believe in creativity, I believe in art as the expression of taking care about what you're doing and the audience and what you're looking at, to gloss over those aspects of something like art and education for that matter, so that are pathological or toxic. I'm not sure that's very well articulated, but I just wanted to throw that in. Thanks for the time.
Okay, Derry, I think you.
Yeah, I apologize too. I missed the first part of your talk, but I was just can I make just a couple of contributions of observations that I've made between school democracy or student participation in decision making and the arts generally. We introduced a program in England about 15 years ago called Creative Partnerships, where quite a large sum of money, we had a left-wing government at the time that was supportive of the arts in schools, quite a large sum of money was available to bring practicing artists into schools, musicians, actors, writers, painters, poets, all kinds. Not all of them were good communicators with young people, because some of them, as you'd said, were struggling along to make their living. They weren't selling pieces of art for $1 million to the Saatchis. They were struggling to make a living, so they wanted to get involved in this project, partly because it would pay them some money. And I was researching two things at the time. One was what effect this had on schools, and also at the same time, I was looking at to what extent children were involved in decision-making in schools, particularly on governing bodies, which is what we call school boards in England. Every school has one. And the research was quite interesting. We found when the young people were involved in the decisions about how the artists would contribute their work to the school, the outcomes were much, much, much more exciting than when the artists were imposed on the children with no involvement of young people in the decisions around how it would be done. That's the first thing. And I've got that's written up and the research is online. Another piece of research I did, we took 6 schools in the area where I lived, including the school where I was principal, and we allowed the kids access to the various arts facilities in the school to work in projects of their own making. So they could make a play, they could create scenery, they could write a book, they could do whatever they wanted to do. And the outcomes were very exciting in the attitude of the children towards school and towards learning and towards each other. It was an enormously positive experience. That's written up as well. And in the Netherlands, there's a movement to involve young people in the design of their school buildings. I don't know if you incorporate architecture in your concept of the arts, but again, involving young people in the design process of the school buildings seems to produce a much higher quality and learning-friendly architecture. I had a lot of visiting musicians, including musicians from South Africa who were effectively in exile. And they township music, and it was a wonderful thing. And it was the means by which 800 kids in the school got a perspective of what was happening in South Africa through the involvement of music, which really communicated with them. So much so that on the day that Mandela was released from prison, there was almost a spontaneous kid-organized music festival and celebration in the school. So these are all ways in which the arts can relate to school democracy. I hope those points aren't completely irrelevant. Thank you.
Thanks, Terry. I think if art is to be for self-expression, then it has to be freely chosen. I mean, art, what I remember from school was the teacher bought a flower pot and put it on the table and said, draw this pot and flower, and then everybody had to draw exactly that and had no choice or say in the matter, which I think then rather defeats the purpose. So democratic education, I think, definitely can allow for a different approach to it. And when you were talking about this music thing with South Africa, my connection broke up. I didn't quite catch all of it, but there is an interesting project in Sri Lanka called the Music Project. We have 2 national languages where many speakers of one language don't speak the other one, so there is a barrier, communication barrier. And in this project, they have 1 school from the Sinhalese speaking area, 1 school from a Tamil speaking area, and the kids get together and use music as a universal language to perform. And it has been great, not only from a musical sense, but also from a reconciliation and peace building aspect. Bridget, your hand has been up for a while, sorry. Bridget?
So I speak from my own perspective as an artist with some of the things you're saying. And one of the things that, well, let's just say gets my goat about discussions about art in school and aesthetics is that it is always put into this space of being about mental health and well-being and emotional expression. I disagree that aesthetics is about feeling. That definition from an anesthesiologist numbing you, I don't think that that's a proper interpretation. The opposite of aesthetic is disruptive and unpleasing, and aesthetics is a visual thing more than a feeling thing, I think. And I think that our sense of aesthetics is what encourage people to think outside of emotional well-being and also think outside of art as a product, because all the discussion I've heard so far is art as a product. We listen to something that's been composed, we see a movie that's been completed, but think about the process. And the process that every artist goes through is a highly involved and full of research and full of connections to all kinds of realms of, you know, what we, so yeah, I just need to pay attention to the fact that yes, children are visual thinkers, they're emotional thinkers. I think that our brains, you know, I have emotions come up in me from seeing something or hearing something or tasting something. So I think that whole thing about memories in children is more complex than simply pictures in our brain. And And I just think that school robs children of an opportunity to even understand what that means. What does art mean? What is, you know, what is this? What does it mean to be an artist? And that's a shame, because I think that all the way through elementary school, if children were given an opportunity to think with materials rather than an expectation to create something, we would have a lot of more young people growing up embracing all the ways that they can emotions in the world.
Thanks, Bridget, for highlighting the aspect, especially of the process that happens while the art is being created and not just the end product of it. Thomas, I think you want to, yeah.
Yes, I just want to remind all of us that there are people who are blind and some people who were born blind. And as we're talking about the role of pictures in how people think, that we just keep in mind that there are people who think very well without the sense of vision to engage in any kind of visual images. Thank you.
Thomas, I think, yes, that's true. But when you're talking about the blind, initially their exposure is to sound and the feeling. I think their memories are also related to that. Whereas the rest, it is visual. So visual is more powerful. Since the vision is impaired, then their the other faculty, the sense, is the hearing and the touch. So they rely on that, and the memories are based on that.
Just to take a second here, it would take a blind person in the conversation to really express what their experience is like when it comes to what's powerful or not.
Sure, yeah.
Anybody else? Artist's voice, art educator's voice, parents' voice?
Stefan, may I go?
Sure.
Yes, it's just, we have got 5 senses. And for each one of us, we use maybe 1 or 2 more than the 3 others. And when I agree completely what you said. Probably it's images stored in the brain, and there is 2. It's very strange because I just read this book. Maybe I can make a scan after and send it. It is the way the child is memorizing or getting back a memory from an image. And the way is different. You have 2 ways. You have right, and it is different if he goes this way, if he goes this way, if he goes this way. So this is the way to remind. So you ask him a question, or he's smelling something, he does that. He's calling back from something he has seen. He's doing that, he's coming from something he's hearing. And the other side is he built because you have never seen before, or never heard before, or never smelled before, or never touched before with kinesthetic senses. So it's a very interesting book coming from Canada, from Quebec. It's in French, I'm so sorry, but you will be able to see the picture and the way they have worked with a neuro scientist, the way the child is building the memories, storing pixel in brain. So I agree with Naga. I'm sorry, I don't have my eyes.
Yeah, Naga.
With Naga, sorry, with Naga. But these pictures are called back different ways when the child is smelling or hearing or watching or by the touch, so kinesthetic. So we have all this sense, and I don't think one is more important than other. we have to use the 5 senses if we can.
I would just make a small comment that actually we have maybe more than 5 senses also, because if you take balance and proprioception, and I think especially for dance and ballet, we maybe use them a lot as well.
Yeah.
That's a good point, Sifan. We have numerous sensors in our body that provide our senses.
Derry, yes?
This has been a really interesting discussion. Thank you. I don't know if it's happening in other countries, but in my country, in England, especially out of the 4 countries in the UK, the 4 nations, the arts are being completely squeezed out of schools by STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. And there are some of us who are campaigning to put an A into the STEM and turn it into STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics, to try and absolutely make the place central, because I'm sure we'd all agree that as a whole generation of young people in my country has been deprived of any access to the arts, apart from the music, which is important, of course, for all young kids, their own music, but they're being deprived of this. And the opportunities for them to meet practicing artists is no longer happening in our school system. I think that this is terrible. And I hope the democratic schools are placing more emphasis on the arts than our public school systems.
I'm sometimes a bit wary of this STEM to STEAM kind of dialogue. I mean, from one side, we could say it's a course correction for having thrown art out of the window and prioritizing STEM, and now suddenly realizing that art is important and that we need to bring it back in. But I think Ken Robinson also had said, like in talking about this STEM to STEAM, saying, well, then what about humanities? Are you going to stick an H in there as well? And I think it's more problematic, the fact that we've tried to designate some subjects as being more important than the others and especially from a perspective of what are children going to do for a vocation afterwards. So art in STEAM seems to be either, well, mostly about the design aspect, because they suddenly realize maybe that without design, whether it's architecture or vehicle design or user interfaces, that all these STEM things are not going to be nice enough for people to want to use them. Or they're talking about using art as a means to learn science. So there was some consultant at a panel who was talking something like that. And I think that art for the purpose of self-expression maybe doesn't so much happen in this STEAM story. Yes, Derek.
No, and of course it should. And I'm a history teacher and also a jazz musician, so I completely agree with you. It's just an attempt for a little bit of rebalancing. It's not enough. I agree.
Thomas?
Yes, and to kind of go along with Derry there, and again, I'm going to say democratic environment for learning is exactly how we make art, like all the other things, as you're saying, Sifan, as important as each young person chooses for themselves and to just explore for themselves. So in the very small Sudbury school that I was closely involved in, one of the biggest corners in the whole area, the rich environment, was with all the materials for creation, anything that could be called art, right? It was the art area. And young people were welcome to stay there as long as they chose to and do what they will there, with by themselves or with others. So I think that's a strong benefit of democratic environments. Thank you.
Thanks, Thomas. Bridget?
Yeah, I think that one of the awful things, like Derry said, is how the arts have been removed from our schools, and how the arts have been misunderstood in our schools. And they're so segregated. It becomes so segregated, and actually, you know, the arts, creative thinking, all of it, they're all linked, they're all connected. You know, I don't know a singer-songwriter who doesn't also paint or write poetry or dance, or, you know, all of the realms of the arts are so interconnected, as they are with the other intelligences or academics of, you know, engineering and science and things. It's all interconnected. And it's a terrible mistake, but it is a real thing. It's a mistake, I think, in education to try to connect, like say, oh, see, we use art to help you understand science. Like that's not an authentic way of respecting what art actually is, and or the artistic process. And I think that one thing, and also we think that sharing products with young people will inspire them. So, you know, listening to classical music has been proven to, in young people, increase their ability for mathematical thinking because of the nature of classical music and how the brain listens and how the brain makes connections at a young age to that music. So yeah, that informs it. But I think that we often give children, you know, I go into schools all the time and it's Picasso week, or, you know, Dead White Men Art Week, right? Plus Frida Kahlo, or, you know, somebody else, depending on your neighborhood. And what people don't understand, and something that I do in my practice, is if I am giving children a material, say found materials, whatever it is, it's only after they've explored that material, they've discovered what that material can do. And I see that there are things coming out maybe about music in it, or maybe it's about movement, or maybe it's about creating a representation of something visually, right? But this, whatever the material, the children have come into a relationship with it first on their own. Then you can show them the work, or listen to a work of an artist that has a connection that maybe, you know, you see a connection to. And when the children see that work, they are in relationship with it already, because they already own the materials and an understanding of those materials. And then they can have a dialogue about that art, what that art says to them, how that art might make them think or feel. But if we just show them something and say, this is a great work of art, let's all make something like this, what the children create is not going to be anything except a copy to please a teacher with an expectation and a curriculum to meet. So I really think and also I just want to make a point that children are aesthetic. Everybody's aesthetic. We all make choices based on what turns us on. You know, my youngest child, I went into his pre-K classroom, and no matter what was on the wall, whatever their paintings were, they all had a spot for their paintings. I always knew where my child's paintings were, because my 4-year-old only painted in plaids, stripes and plaids. He never mushed it. He never did any, right? And that is his character. He plans, he puts things in order, you know, because he's my son, he didn't care that they wanted him to paint like Jackson Pollock that day. He paints in plaids. So I think giving more experiences for children to use what we call artist materials, whether it's their bodies, sound, whatever, as ways of thinking and being in relationship, will then inform their ability to connect and relate as they get older, and to reach for what we consider artistic thinking in their real life situations, and not feel like they're not an artist, but feel like they're a thinker who uses all of their languages to make their space in the world.
Thank you, Bridget.
Yeah, it's quite unfortunate the adult mind, which is already spoiled and has no perspective of art, dictates terms as to what art should be. And I agree with Brigitte that it's fragmented, whether otherwise it should be integrated rather than fragmentation. You can't separate art from other subjects. So, yes.
No, I was just going to bring up another example of what happens too. And this happened to my children in public school in Brooklyn. They got to middle school. They got to go to the arts middle school, public middle school that was going to, you know, that focused on the arts. And all of the children leaving this middle school were going to get accepted, because in New York City, you have to get accepted. You get into a particular high school. So the entire program was based on children developing, middle schoolers developing portfolios so that they could get into high school. And so they segregated everything. So I had a child who was a photography major in middle school, which meant he never wrote poetry, he never painted, he never danced, he never took a music lesson, he never did any of those things. And my child who was in singing never did any of those other things. So that's a terrible deprivation, that we've only imposed more judgment of what you can or can't be as an artist so early in their schooling. And what a shame, you know? I mean, middle school is one of the last times that boys are willing to get up on a stage and be silly before culture tells them, you know, you're too queer to do that, or that's too weird, or you have to be a lawyer. So I think it's very important that in our work as educators that we maintain an honest, authentic integration of aesthetics and the arts in how we learn.
Yes, yes.
I think
and the child's very first expression is lines, and they express so quickly, so easily, and their observation is beyond our thinking. So if we try to restrict them from what we think, I think we are spoiling the thought process of the child. And therefore, no creativity. So creativity means to think differently. Whereas the adult mind is training the child to think in a particular way, which means we are denying the child to think in a different way. And we call that art. We can't. So every subject has a potential to make the child look at things differently in the world. Think differently. Which is why I agree with Brigitte that it should be integrated rather than separated as a separate class and, you know, fragment it.
Yeah, it's all about relationships.
Yes, exactly.
I think there's an aspect of that problem that Bridget was mentioning, that because we organize schools in a way that is economical or convenient for the adults, so we have a separate teacher for singing, a separate teacher for dance, yes, a separate teacher for painting, and then scheduling those people becomes a problem. In one of Ken Robinson's talks, he also says he wanted to learn German and art, and the school said he can't do that, and he was like, why can't I do that? I mean, don't German people have art? And it turns out it's a problem that the school schedule didn't allow it. And I think Andrea has also commented that even the idea of putting them into subjects themselves is already creating a problem. Srini, just before I come to you, Technica, you had something you wanted to share from I think parent perspective.
Yeah. Thanks, Stefan. So my idea is like, everyone has an artist inside them. As a kid, they have it inside them. The question is whether as parents, are we allowing them to bring that up and become an artist in the way that they want. I'm not just telling like it is in a form of, in an engineer also there can be an artist who will think differently and which will help them to innovate something different. So that is also an art. So, and someone else will be good at craft, things like that. And my thinking is, as parents, we need to help them to bring that up and to be innovative in the way that they think to help them to bring that out from inside. Thank you.
Thank you, Technica. Srinivasan, you had a hand up.
Yeah. In fact, inspired by all of you, I suddenly started reiterating more on the art in every nook and corner of the world, outside and inside. Well, as far as the nature is concerned, there is art and beauty in every nook and corner. And even in our regular daily life, from the morning, if you start seeing the bed, the arrangement, the pillow, the designs on the pillow, then after that you go to the loo, the very design of the loo itself, and the soap that you use, the toothpaste and the toothbrush, like that, if you start watching, every bit of every aspect of life is art. There is art integrated in that. And the dress that you select, the color of it, the designs that you put on it, wow. Where is the place without an art? Your car, your design of the car, your house, whatever, whichever nook and corner you see. But now I'm a little troubled and not very clear. What went wrong where? Why is that we are separately talking art and separately talking science and things like that? Can Sifan and the forum help me and support me and understand about it more?
Okay, the history of the separation, I'm not too sure if there's somebody else who can explain how this came about.
Okay. Now I'm not even going to the history of it, but where is all this separation? Why is this happening? Why are we looking at things in a distributed format? Whereas in nature, you definitely can't see a physics and a chemistry and a biology or whatever it is separately. It is out of question. It is not possible to see things isolatedly. Whereas in our general life, we have gone into so much of specialization, started focusing on a particular thing and started writing big books about it. Yeah.
Okay, I think
sorry. Yeah.
That, from my perspective, I feel the answer is in the way that we school. School as an institution, the conventional mode of school, operates with subjects, which does not really exist. Subjects separated and then assessed through specific exams for that subject, taking things completely out of context and isolating them. So that is, I think, is the answer in my head. Where this has happened, it's the way the conventional school is run that completely disregards how the world is interconnected, how everything is interconnected and interdependent, and nothing happens in isolation. So that's I think in that process, arts got probably the worst hand, that it actually got to be assessed at all, which just loses the point altogether. How do you standardize and assess art? It's an individual expression which is unique to each person. So that's my 2 cents on that question, Srinivas.
Who was that speaker? Who spoke now?
Dileepa.
Dileepa, yes.
Oh, Dileepa.
Yes.
I'll catch you.
Dileepa
I'll catch you later on.
Dileepa is the mother of the 5-year-old artist.
Oh.
Dileepa, can I respond to that, Dileepa?
Yes.
Because I think that we need to get away from the notion of art as a product and start looking at the process.
Absolutely.
And when we start looking at the process, then we'll understand the meaning of whatever it is. And, we often, like after 9/11, I was in Manhattan. Children were told by their teachers, stop. You can't build towers anymore. You can't draw towers. You can't paint towers. You can't sing about towers. You can no more. And that was wrong. And it was wrong because every time a child drew those towers, they were thinking about something new. They were still thinking about but that was their way of representing it. But while they were drawing, if you listened, they were addressing another aspect of the problem.
Yes.
And so I think the process is where, and it's out of a clear cultural obliteration of understanding of what it is to even express intelligence or emotions, that makes it that it's all about the product. But at school, we really do need to pay more attention to the process, and even looking at other grown artists' work. You know, we eliminate the process. What were they really addressing or thinking about? It's not just what we're perceiving in a product.
And from what Dileepa has said, I think learning by subjects is the absolute very big mistake. It's a very fundamental mistake, has to be completely removed of. That approach itself has to be removed. And we'll have to see life as a more holistic and integrated approach.
I think part of the reason for the focus on art as the product rather than the process, the point that Bridget was talking about, is I think from the commercial aspect, it's the product that gets sold. I don't know if there's, maybe people will soon commercialize. Actually, maybe in some cases we maybe do in these reality shows and things like that, where people are cooking in the show, and then we've found a way to monetize the process there as well. But generally, I guess the commercial aspect of art has led us to focus on the product. And there was some comments in the chat, and I think Samantha had also said about unless it's a marketable skill, it cannot be useful or worthy. So we only value the art if the product is good enough for this person to make a vocation out of it, and if not, then it's not worth pursuing, seems to be the message we are getting. Sorry, Naga, do you have your hands up, or?
Just want to add.
And before Naga,
yeah,
Naga, before you take off, I will give you a fantastic idea of how to commercialize art in a different perspective, from the aesthetics or whatever conventional methods, if that is what is the valuation of art. Probably, maybe if there is an asymmetry or something not absolutely clear, if we can probably focus on the feeling that went into the art form, whatever be it. If that can be popularized, that can also have commercial value, the feeling part of it.
Yeah, but that is conceptualized. But at school level, the thought is totally different. But today, I see a lot of academicians are looking at this problem and addressing. The textbooks are focusing on integrating and making it as holistic as possible. They're trying to bring in expression from the child, and drawing, and including songs and things like that to whatever topic they're actually proposing. So there is an attempt to make it more holistic. Of course, there's more to be done in that, because in the beginning we have fragmented, and now we are trying to put it together. So school is a place where it is all broken up. And before that, the child is holistic, So the child comes to the school and learns to how to break things up. And at a higher level, you are trying to patch it up and say, no, education is holistic. And the child knows it from inside. Oh my God, this is what I was. And I was totally broken apart. So it's the adult, that's the problem, you see.
So
Terry was there.
Yeah, the adult could either make it or the adult could break it for the children.
Yes, yes.
Daddy, did you want to speak or?
Yeah, he wanted.
Yeah, maybe. Thank you. I was thinking about one of my own children. I completely agree with the comment about schools breaking things up, and I'm all in favour of integration, as long as there is the opportunity within the integration for a young person to discover what they're good at and then pursue it in as specialist a way as they want to. One of my own kids was a complete failure academic subjects. As a musician, I wasn't sufficiently aware of his talent. He went to do a sign writing course for painting names on the side of delivery vans. But fortunately, a tutor in a local art college spotted him and said, "This is ridiculous," and found him a place on his fine art course. He eventually became a painter, and he had a little bit of success locally, doing paintings and portraits. People put them in the houses, and he used to become very angry because I remember him telling me at one time, a lady who paid quite a bit of money for a picture said, "Could you make it a little bit more pink, please, so that it goes with the decor of my house?" He was pretty outraged by this and tore the painting up and threw it away. And his wife said, "For heaven's sake, we can't afford to do that." Now he's got an exhibition in Los Angeles. His work's being bought by the Saatchis, and he's selling pictures for tens of thousands of pounds. But now it's still very unsatisfying from his point of view as a communicator, not as a creator, but as a communicator wanting to talk about himself and his view of the world through his painting. Because now people buy his paintings and they put them in storage just to watch the price go up. So it's very difficult as an artist. What is the best way to be an artist, and what should we tell young people about the life of an artist? I'm sorry, probably that was a load of garbage. Sorry if I wasted your time, but the dilemma of what is value in art is a big one, I think.
I think there are definitely different perspectives to take on board in this. One area that maybe we didn't come up so far because we were talking more from art as creating art for self-expression or whatever purpose, but should art education also encompass, or rather how should it encompass art appreciation in terms of, I mean, for whatever reason, I never got around to appreciating Shakespeare's work. So there's something I've possibly lost out there. But how could that come in? So from the aspect of benefiting from the art that others have created. And I also cannot, I'm unable to really enjoy any sort of painting. If I go to a museum with paintings or something like that, I'm bored to death. And so I don't know if it's something that I haven't learned how to do that is making me miss out on the opportunities there. Anybody who could comment on art appreciation?
I think, as we have already touched upon, it's a personal, expression and feelings and perspective. Perhaps when you look at a painting and you are looking at the painter's perspective, painter's feeling, the artists are trying to say something. But if you are not able to look through his eyes or her eyes, then you won't be able to appreciate what the person has created. We always try to look at through our own perspective, our eye, and our understanding of art and color and shape and things like that. Strokes even. When I look at the painting, I even look at the strokes and the lines, the color combination and things like that. Then I really don't know which one appeals to me.
I think this is where it's really important to bring artists into schools and
Right.
let young kids listen to artists talk about their work. They're not all that good at it, but some are. And it's very important that young people should be able to listen to people who live through their work, through their creative artistic work. Not just listen to art teachers talk about art, but to listen to artists.
Actually, the appreciation starts very young, I would say. Even at home, when mother cooks nicely and then you appreciate it, that's a great art, you see. There is an appreciation, and somebody is decorating the house and you say, wow, this is fantastic. I love this. I like this, arrangement. And the appreciation starts from there. And it goes much further on appreciating. So you start learning to appreciate things done in a different way. So decoration at home and even dressing, people dress in different way, and you appreciate, right? And you are ready to appreciate even maybe poetry. You are ready to appreciate a picture. You are ready to appreciate a garden, whatever. And we don't encourage that at the early age. The school, of course, it's way beyond all that. So I would say this whole perspective of art should start from maybe from home. From if it starts from there, I think children look at things differently.
Thanks, Naga. Bridget, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, I think, well, just to tag onto that thought, I think it's already in us. It doesn't start. We're born with an aesthetic appreciation and choices, and, spend time with any toddler, and a 2-year-old will, stop what they're doing, or you're doing something, and they'll be like, oh, wait, and they'll adjust one little piece or put a little, a figure somewhere just right. And okay, now it's ready. That's aesthetic choice. That's, we say, oh no, let's put it over here, or this makes more sense, or whatever, right? We teach them to that's not valuable. But I think also that, I live in New York City. I know a lot of artists who are, and I am not an artist who shows in galleries or has ever pursued that path, mostly because I don't see myself, just like young Indian and Black children in America see a vice president in the White House. Now they know it's a possibility because they see it happen. And it couldn't, and that's what's, the art world is a white male dominated industry. It is about investment. It is about, it is a struggle for women or artists of color to get their paintings bought and hung by any major museum. The Guerrilla Girls are real. The Guerrilla Girls are activists who bring out to major institutions the fact that they don't have artists in there, that women in their collections. So, I think that they're just like in education and so much of our world, like we have to recognize where consumerism and the patriarchy and the elite have messed with our whole well-being of as a culture of human beings, and put monetary things on products and made them into, paintings in America. Why they're just, I know so many male painters who paint the same exact thing over and over and over again. And it is not self-expression anymore. It is not anything except that they understand that's how their work is going to sell. And it's easy. Oh, look at that. I've never seen them do hardly any other kind of work except that abstract piece that sell another $30,000 painting. And, you know, I could go on and on, because speaking as a woman in America, you know, I have a lot to say about it. And unfortunately, children, if they don't see themselves, they're not going to think that it's a possibility. And they need to meet artists, and they need to meet artists in their studios. They need to see their process. They need to, you know, it's not just about the product. It's about how you engage. And that's what we need to honor in order to develop more fully rounded human beings. It's really important.
So hearing Bridget's talk on that, I remember a couple of incidents. There is a street in Sri Lanka where there are artists selling paintings, and apparently there is one particular design that sells well. So in addition to the other work, every artist on that street has that particular type of artwork because that's what sells. And if you don't create that art, then you're not going to have food on the table. So I think even in Derry's example of that, make it more pink, there is the commercialization of art always has some creates problems for the artist's expression. The other story I wanted to share, so on this side of the sort of political side of things, there's I think also the aspect of art itself being a tool for revolution. I lived a year in Estonia where they are very proud of their singing revolution. Every 5 years there is this huge song festival. We went for it last year where at the crescendo of it, there were 30,000 people on the stage, about 100,000 people in the audience. So like 1/10 of Estonia was in that field. And this had been for many years of occupation under varying forces, a tool or an expression that kept the Estonian language and identity alive. So I think when on one side, when society is prosperous, it engages in art because it has money for it and free time for it. But when society is oppressed also, we turn to the arts because that's the only place sometimes we find our humanity.
Well, in today's discussion, one more point went into my head more profoundly, and that is observing from the creator's perspective. See, normally whenever anybody, including myself, when we see an art, we see it from our perspective. Now, today, I think I'm learning the need to start seeing it from the creator's perspective. Now, if I start expanding this idea from the creator of the art or the art piece, whatever, and from there, if you go into the nature, the design of the nature, the design of this earth, the design of this cosmos, from the creator's perspective, I think that is where we come closer to the real learning.
But that's always impossible, Srinivas.
I don't know whether possible or not. But
because every individual is unique.
Okay.
And expression is also unique. Your perspective is unique. And to walk into the shoes of the creator is not going to be so easy because you have to throw away what you have.
Right.
Unless you throw away what you have, you can't go into that shoe.
Absolutely.
You have to be zero.
But sometimes the process of trying to step into somebody else's shoes is also something that expands your mind and your thinking. So it may not be possible to do it all the time for everything, but in certain cases, I mean, that's what we define also as empathy, right? Trying to see things from another person's perspective.
Yes.
So if an piece of art doesn't, or even the process of creating it doesn't move us the same way that the artist intended, it doesn't mean that our feelings are invalid and we have to take on the artist's feelings, but we could explore what the artist was trying to convey and then hopefully learn something from that and move on.
Yes, yes. Yeah.
By the way, we are quite significantly over time, but as long as we haven't been kicked out of the Zoom room, I think it's all right.
No, I think this room is free. The other room is active now.
Yeah, unless there's another session booked here, but I think
there's no session after this on this channel.
Okay.
There's another program going on parallelly, wheel of life. So if you want to continue to discuss, you could.
Yeah, I think anybody who is, I mean, it's a sort of rolling conversation. It's not like you're going to miss a lecture or something like that. So if somebody needs to leave, they could leave. But if we have enough people willing to stay on, we can continue. Andre, you had been sending some stuff on the chat. Is there something you'd like to say about it to the group? Is Andre still here? Okay, I think we have lost Andre anyway. Okay.
He left.
Yeah.
I think that what you're saying, Sifan, about that is so important. And I repeat again, you know, having a relationship with the material that if it's from, you know, your relationship to it is from a long time ago experience, you still have created a personal connection that informs your desire and also your ability to enter into the thinking. Is everybody gone?
We are down to about 12 people now.
Can I share a quick little story?
Sure, Bridget.
So as an artist in a school, I call the studio spaces ateliers. We don't call it an art studio, art anything, because for young children, we just want them to understand it's a place to create and make, and it's not about art, because art has become a word that has so many definitions. But when in my work, I would often share stories, storybooks, or videos that there were some really good ones that were done that were about artists for children, like so a story of Degas and why Degas loved the ballet dancers. And so maybe a book about Degas going to the studio and meeting a dancer and what that meant. So ways to engage children in coming to understand the artist as a person or their subject matter and what that meant. So my 4-year-old daughter loved the stories about Vincent van Gogh. And when the Museum of Modern Art was closing for renovations, and it was going to be closed for a couple of years. And so we went to pay a visit there before it closed down, and we wouldn't be able to see the galleries that we enjoyed visiting. And so she kept saying, are we going to see Vincent? Are we going to see Vincent? And the Museum of Modern Art had a very small little gallery, little room that you could go in, and there were Vincent's paintings. And she walked in and said, oh, Vincent, I've been missing you. How are you? And she began to talk to all the paintings and just had a total, just carried on. And it was lovely. And she had, you know, older siblings who were like, can we go now? We walk out of the little Van Gogh gallery and we walk into a gallery that it was the time when the Jackson Pollock movie had just come out. And so there was a huge line of people sitting on this long bench, must have been, you know, 30, 40 feet long in front of this huge Jackson Pollock. And my 4-year-old daughter looked at them, saw that they were all intent looking on this work on the wall, turned around, looked at the work on the wall. She walked right to the center of them, looked at all of them, put her hands up and said, what is this mess? Does he know Vincent? He should talk to Vincent. Because, you know, and then carried on. And some of the adults were like, get this pesky child away. You know, some of them laughed. And then a few moments later, I see an elderly gentleman following us in the museum. And he saw me noticing him. And I'm like, hey, I see you. You're kind of stalking us here. I didn't say anything. he approached me and he said, do you mind if I introduce myself to your daughter? I come to this museum for tours every Tuesday, and she has given me the most delightful tour I have ever had in visiting this museum. And he and she proceeded to walk around the museum and look at every exhibit together and have amazing discussions about what they were looking at with each other. And, you know, that wouldn't have happened if my child were in a school group being told what to look at and why it was important that they understand the artist. So I really think it's just so important to give our children as much experiences to create their own relationships with the arts, so that then they can bring, you know, and then they'll specialize. You know, I hate that we call it specials. In America, art is a specialty, you know, and it's not a specialty, it's a human right. So thanks for listening.
Yeah, that was a lovely story, Bridget. And when you're talking about the relationship, it reminded me that part of the relationship is also the biography of that artist and knowing what their life was like and what their life experience. I mean, I don't think we can appreciate Van Gogh without the story of him cutting his ear off and the process that led to that, or of Beethoven being deaf, and you know, all of the historical aspects of it are also part of the lived experience of the art, I think. Srinivas, you have your hand up.
No, I've done.
Okay.
Not lower? Okay.
Yeah, it's okay. So I think we could try to maybe wind down the conversation. So thank you very much for everybody who participated and contributed. And of course, some people have left already because we ran over time, but I think that's it was okay to continue for the people who could continue.
And,
I'm really
Stefan, if you have any closing remarks, we would like to hear from you.
Well, okay, I don't really know to say that, you know, these are the next 3 things we should do or something like that, but it has been very insightful to hear the different perspectives. And I think, I don't know, maybe one of the areas in education that's missing is the perspective of artists. I mean, children's voices are also missing. It's all adults deciding about it and then putting it onto children. But if art is such a fundamental part of what it means to be human, then people who not necessarily professional artists, but the ones who have reached a higher level of enjoyment in the art should also be part of the discourse on what school should look like. And this is, I think, a conversation that we've opened up many different areas in the short time that we had. And I've shared the link in the chat of how you can connect with Schools 4.0. And I mean, it's great to have this very live chat like this with Zoom, but then it's sometimes not possible to get everybody together. And that's where some other mediums like Discord or Discourse are good. So hopefully some people will be able to connect and we can carry on the conversation like that. But anybody who would share their contacts with me, I can also keep you all informed. So maybe 1 or 2 months down the line, we can try to schedule another Zoom call where we can get together like this and explore some thoughts as well. So I'm looking forward to hearing more thoughts, hearing more ideas. And from our side, we'll be trying to use all of this inspiration for what we're doing with Schools 4.0. But I think whatever we discuss is valuable for educators anywhere, whether it's in democratic schools or public schools or anything. So thank you very much, everybody, for your participation.
Thank you, Stefan.
It's been a good discussion.
Lovely time with you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Fight with each other, or the Ashuras and gods, they fight with each other. Sometimes the Ashuras win, sometimes the god wins. So, but here it is that